Alex Antle. Splaytic is a beaded watershed map of the Exploits River. The waterways are represented by the 4 different sizes of shiny, deep blue seed beads tacked down onto a tan-colored, soft suede moose hide. The beads are connected tightly to the moose hide and to each other. The river begins in the top right corner of the moose hide with the Bay of Exploits. The Bay of Exploits is located near Botwood, and this is where the river flows into the ocean. Moving left on the moose hide, the river flows through Bishop's Falls, Grand Falls, Windsor, Red Indian Lake, and ends near Lloyd's River. There are also many tributaries above and below the river. These are smaller brooks and waterways that flow from the main river. The Exploits River is the longest river on the island, spanning 246 kilometers across central Newfoundland. Along with being a salmon river, the Exploits supports many life forms in and out of the water. This river has been essential to the lives of central Newfoundland's Indigenous peoples for thousands of years.
My name is Ashleigh. I am an ecological artist. My work explores the interconnections between humans and nature. Like a magpie, I collect all manner of fabrics, fibres and yarns, particularly those that have been discarded or destined for landfill. I assemble these reclaimed materials into different narratives with an intention to deepen my understanding of our relationship with the natural world. Ever since I was a little girl, I've been fascinated by all the amazing colours, textures and general wonders that surround us. I love how natural sights, sounds and smells unfold to stimulate and awaken all our senses. It is the magical, evocative and indeed romantic view of nature that inspires me. I originally studied textile design, a decision influenced by the designer William Morris. His intrinsically exquisite textiles and wallpaper stimulated my interest in pattern making and repetition of form. Though it was the importance William Morris placed on nature that resonated most for me. He believed that a flourishing natural environment is for humans a vital need, a need rooted in our very nature. This concept I too hold true. As well as a dedicated observation of natural forms, my practice also is about ritual and again repetition, gesture and the exploration of actions. For example, the act of unraveling, unwinding, distangling and twisting, or even the simple act of meambling. These repetitive processes allow me to focus my attention to one continuous action at a time. Mindful meditations, if you will, that concentrate the mind and create a silent space for contemplation, reflection, and hopefully a more personal and profound relationship with nature. I love to study nature, like this woven drawing, for example, made from reclaimed yarn, a woven seascape whose textures and surfaces reflect the continuous movement of water, a collection of circles that together create a tactile vision of waves and ripples. I am an ecological artist. I believe that if we continually observe and strive to connect with the wonders of our natural world, we can find true beauty and meaning in life, a sincere and profound human nature interconnectedness.
Ashleigh Downey. Reclaimed thread, yarn, string, and discarded fishing line. Dimensions variable. A seascape, a woven landscape that represents ocean water. A collection of circles that together create a tactile vision of waves and ripples. Imagine dropping a pebble in water. This action causes ripples to radiate across the surface, giving energy to water in the form of waves. Made from reclaimed thread, yarn, string, and discarded fishing line, the textured surface of this artwork reflects both the continuous movement and shimmering nature of water. Glass, cork, paper, ink. A glass bottle sits on the top of a box shelf. Inside is a long, thin strip of coiled paper. On this paper, the sentence, "It is the tension between that binds us," is written in one continuous line over and over again. The paper is approximately 18 meters long. The bottle is sealed with a cork. The artist invites you to post an anonymous message through the opening to the front of the box. At the end of the show, these messages will be sent back to her, where she will craft them into another artwork. The question the artist is asking is, in this current moment in time, what message would you send to someone across the ocean? This video begins with the sound of the sea, of waves gently lapping upon the shore. This sound, along with squawking seabirds, continues throughout the video. The screen is completely blank for the first 30 seconds. Then out of the darkness comes a small beacon of light in the center of the screen, a pinhole of color and movement. As if being viewed through a monocular, this pinhole grows bigger and bigger, slowly revealing a seascape of rocks and a calm sea shimmering in the sunlight. The pinhole gets wider as the view expands to fill the screen, revealing the full seascape. A beach scene with waves gently lapping against a rocky shore. The sea stretches out to the horizon line. Here and there, small white seabirds flitter across the seascape. The edges of the seascape are blurry and distorted, as if in a dream state. The center, however, is sharp and can be seen with clarity. The scene remains calm and undisturbed for a while. Nothing changes, just the gentle lapping of water and the occasional seabird. About 3 minutes into the video, 2 black seabirds, perhaps a Cape cormorant or a Cape shag, who have been resting on the water, emerge from the middle ground and fly close to the rocky water's edge. Together they float and surface dive. In the top left corner, a black spot slowly emerges, so gradually and subtly that you hardly notice it appearing. Finally, it becomes a solid yet hazy black circle. From behind this circle, a flock of white seabirds dart across the seascape. They turn and fly back towards the dark spot. Another black spot, this time larger, starts to emerge in the center of the scene. The 2 circles block out some of the view, denying the eye anything to look at in that area. Before long, however, the first circle fades into being and the top left-hand corner is visible once more. The second black spot lingers for a while, but soon it too disappears out of existence. The scene is calm again, and for some time it is back to its original state. After about 2.5 minutes, a new black circle appears, again emerging slowly and subtly. This black spot is the smallest yet, and it's positioned halfway between the top right and the top center of the scene. It covers 2 small boulders in the distance, but doesn't stay for long. It soon fades out. This time the scene is left in peace for only a short while. Suddenly, the image is being swallowed up by blackness coming in from the right. As this blackness consumes the seascape, there is a flurry of activity, birds in flight. Slowly but surely, the scene disappears. The seascape is gradually blotted out, with the last visible area being the top left corner, a few rocks where seabirds rest. The video ends with just a tiny pinhole of light visible in the corner. The rest of the screen blank, just as it was in the beginning. This video is 8 minutes, 4 seconds in length.
Hello, my name is Jade Yumang. I'm an artist based in Chicago, Illinois, which sits on the traditional homelands of the people of the Council of Three Fires, the Ojibwe, Potawatomi, and Odawa, as well as the Menominee, Miami, and Ho-Chunk nations. For the most part, the work I do examines how queer optics permeate into culture, how that is absorbed, embodied, repeated, and eventually materialized into deviating forms through a variety of techniques to convey notions of phenomenology, affect, and queer as a process. The works I have for the show are based on 1970s disco as a framework, a decade after critical movements such as the sexual revolution, civil rights movement, women's rights movement, and the gay rights movement. The fluidity of identities associated during this era through popular music, fashion, and dance created a counter-reaction called the Disco Sucks movement, also known as Disco Demolition Night. Led by a radio DJ, Steve Dahl, based in Chicago, the movement was mainly supported by disenfranchised white cisgendered men frustrated with the burgeoning cultural revolution. This passionate revulsion against disco was used as a masquerade against the impact and significance of the cultural revolution from that era. For the show, I made handheld sculptures as a reaction to this counter-reaction. The fabric used for the sculptures are hand-painted with dye paste and silk-screened using disco posters from Chicago from that era, specifically Duggan's Bistro S stencils. The mediums used to silk-screened with are discharge paste that removes parts of the dye, thermochromic ink that reacts to body heat when touched, and decorated with paillettes. Inside the sculptures are bells and a battery-operated vibrator. When touched, the ink transitions color from either blue to clear or red to yellow, and the sculptures vibrate and will stop when the battery is depleted as an abstract analogy to bodies expressing themselves through dance and getting lost in the music.
Jade Yumang. This embodiment of crafting your own world through dance is presented formally through 3 small-sized abstract sculptures made from fabric printed with thermochromic ink, textured with relief foam, and embellished with paillettes. Embedded inside will be vibrators that will generate the movement for each sculpture. The sculptures are placed on the floor and are dancing around the gallery. They will only stop once the battery is depleted. Each sculpture can be picked up. Consequently, each time it is held, the temperature of the body of whomever is holding it will be recorded temporarily in the sculpture due to the thermochromic ink. Janet Peter. This is a papier-mâché vase coated with paper clay and finished with acrylic paint and varnish. This piece stands 41 centimeters tall and is 76 centimeters in diameter. A wide bottom vase tapers to a narrow neck, resting on 4 small legs to give it balance. 2 handles have been affixed on either side of the base of the narrow neck of the vase. As texture is the focal point of this work, it has been decorated with random textural features inlaid in the paper clay coating. It is painted in many colorful layers, with a final layer of yellow ochre, which I hope will be worn away as people touch it to reveal the color beneath. Jennifer Young. This interactive installation brings together color, texture, form, and movement. Think of this as a giant mobile hanging from the ceiling. Overall, the work is suspended on a frame of driftwood, approximately 8 feet long by 3 feet wide. It incorporates multiple 4x4-inch craftboard cards, which have been covered with encaustic wax using a spectrum of colors and then attached by fishing line to the wood frame. At one end, the cards hang approximately 7 feet off the floor, cascading down to the opposite end, which is approximately 3 feet off the floor. Standing or sitting, walking or rolling through the installation, the participant can see and touch the cards. Simply moving through the room will create airflow, and the movement will cause the cards to spin, twist, and sparkle in the light. The colors on the cards range from across the full rainbow, from light yellow to deep purple, pale pink to brilliant blue. As well, the colors range through a spectrum of the more earthy colors of browns, golds, grays, and greens. To create texture and depth, a variety of items made from both natural and man-made materials have been attached to the cards. These include feathers, string, paper, wooden shapes, buttons, rhinestones, and glitter. The installation was inspired by artist Tara Bryan. She introduced me to using the cards to collect encaustic paint. Reflecting on her creative process, I've been motivated to construct this touchable and interactive work of art.
My name is Joanne B Kaar. I'm here at the viewpoint on Dunnet Head, looking at Dunnet Head Lighthouse, which was built in 1831. This is the furthest north point on mainland UK. The view to the north looks over the Pentland Firth to the islands of Orkney. This is Hoy and the Old Man of Hoy, the stack of rocks. It's a flat calm day today and not many boats. And now looking towards the island of Stroma and then back along the north coast looking east towards the village of Scarscary, the Castle of May and Duncansby Lighthouse in the distance. Now looking at Broch Harbour, the little inlet, and the cluster of houses is Broch Village. That's where I grew up, and the harbour's where we go fishing. My parents still live in the village. Dunnet Head is covered with lochs, heather, and the lines you can see are the scars from the peat banks where people used to dig peat by hand for fuel. We're now looking towards the middle of Dunnet Head, and you can see the twisting road heading back to the village. That long stretch of road there at the edge of the loch is called the Haunted Road. I don't know any more to it than that, but it's a mystery to solve. At the edge of the heather is the village of Dunnet where I live. Now looking towards the south, and you can see hills in the distance, and heading west see Scrabster and Thurso and the hills of Morven, Ben Loyal and Ben Hope in the distance. There's the ferry heading back from Orkney into Scrabster. And we're back round at Dunnet Head Lighthouse.
Joanne B Kaar. Standing in my field on Dunnet Head in the north coast of Scotland, Caithness, I took this photo of Brow Village, where I grew up and my parents still live. The Pentland Firth and the Orkney Islands are in the distance. Made to measure for my dad, this jumper was hand-knitted in the late 1970s by Camilla Eames Knitwear in Orkney. It was purchased from her first shop in Victoria Street, where my dad remembered seeing a small coal fire at the back of the room. The abstract pattern jumper is a mix of dark browns, rusty oranges, and greys, all very evocative of the heather-covered peaty landscape in the north of Scotland. Taken in 1977, one photo is of me with my dad in our trailer of peat, dug for fuel to keep our house warm. Another photo is of the peat stack. Handed down to my husband, the jumper was in need of repair. In 2018, while maker in residence for the Craft Council of Newfoundland and Labrador at the Old Cottage Hospital in Norris Point, I invited the public to bring me their woolen garments for repair. I titled my residency project, On the Mend. My dad turned me a wooden darning dolly, mushroom-shaped, to use during the residency, and to start things off, I brought 2 garments with me to mend, and one was this 40-year-old jumper. Still a favorite, but beyond repair, using only the wool from the jumper, I transformed it into this twiddle muff, a comforter for those with restless hands. Before I unraveled it, my dad wore it while leaning on his peat spade near to where we used to cut peats on Donnet Head. Inspired by the colors of the jumper and landscape around me, I stiffened some of the wool strands, giving the feel of heather roots inside the muff. Inspired by the traditional thrummed mitts of Newfoundland, I also incorporated many soft strands of wool and retained my mending made while in Newfoundland. These are a series of padded circles inside one end of the muff near the rim. The wooden darning dolly is inside the muff. In my search for info about the Orkney knitter, I was interviewed by BBC Radio Orkney reporter Hugh Williams. This resulted in many enthusiastic responses from listeners who knew or once worked for Camilla. Even Hugh's mother had 2 cherished Camilla Eames knitwear garments. My dad still has brochures from the 1980s The Tent, Edinburgh Festival's craft fair in Princess Street Gardens, where my parents, Liz and Michael O'Donnell, exhibited their decorated turned wood, and Camilla Eames exhibited her knitwear. Many suggested she moved to Edinburgh and then possibly to Africa. A further search found this. Mozambique. Camilla Eames has joined the Visual Arts School in Maputo as a textiles teacher. But the links were broken, and I've been unable to find out any more.
Hello, my name is June Walker-Wilson, and I'm a visual artist. I have found my low-relief oil paintings tempted people to touch them. They wanted to experience for themselves the feel of the pieces. This set me wondering how I could create artworks which could be handled with no detriment to the pieces themselves and provide the audience with the tactile sensation they were seeking. This experience also made me realise that such pieces would permit the inclusion of a population usually excluded from visual art. This got me enthusiastic about participating in this show. I took the opportunity to experiment and try new things. One piece is made from found objects or throwaway items. 2 small pieces are purely abstract textures. The third body of work was the most interesting to make and the most experimental. The 2 panels consist of a foreground and background, designed to mimic, in miniature, an outdoor scene. They were fun to construct, and I hope you enjoy them. Thank you.
June Walker-Wilson. These 2 pieces are miniature representations of a lake surrounded by a forest. Start at the bottom of each panel. Feel the ground level green foliage and the bumpy brown rocks. There are 3 gray tree trunks on the front of each panel. Follow these upwards to find the branches in the treetops. In the left-hand panel, place your fingers each side of the center tree to feel the ripples captured in the blue water of the background. Move upwards to feel the bushes and trees on the far shore in their fall colors of gold, orange, and red. In the right-hand panel, in addition to the water ripples and trees in the background, there are orange reeds growing out of the water. Feel them with your right hand. The small orange plastic pieces used in the making of these images are bolted to a blue wooden background. The plastic pieces are throwaway seals from printing ink cartridges. Breaking off the seal releases the flow of ink. A seal and cartridge can be found at the side of the piece in plastic bags. The curved shape of the seal is intriguing, suggesting flower petals. The pieces have been arranged into 3 flower shapes with green bottle cap centers. Find these circular centers and work out from there. These 2 small images are non-representational. Enjoy them for their tactile feel and the texture of their undulating surfaces. Kelly Bruton. Sitting slightly off the floor, coils of cloth are spiraling, sitting on top of each other. The coils are made by gathering together long strips of different blues in cloth, some shiny, dull, silky, and coarse, all bound and tightly wrapped together. The coils are thick nearer the bottom of the sculpture, and as the coils build on top of each other, they slowly begin to become smaller. Around the top, the coils begin to change, some with pods in them, some are hard, heavy, and others very soft. Some of the coils are suspended from the ceiling and threaded through holes in a small translucent cloth made of blue-colored circles. The translucent cloth is also suspended above the coiled base, a few of the coils hanging down to reach the top of the coiled base. You may not be sure if the sculpture is coming together or falling apart. Laura Kenney. A red-haired woman wearing a black dress is sitting on one end of a canoe. The canoe is in the center of the piece, and there are different shades of gold horizontal lines to resemble wood. It is still in the water. Another red-haired woman in a black dress is trying to get on the other end of the canoe. And there is another woman, red-haired, black dress, face down in the water beside the canoe. The sky is white, foggy, and the water is wavy with blue, green, gray, and lavender. Sarah Albu. An abstract tangle of intertwined woolly tubes make up the outer layer of this textile sculpture. Is it a brain? A gut? A heart? The tubes are knit out of different kinds of yarns coming from different sources. Much of this outer layer is knit from hand-spun single and two-ply yarn spun from different sources of wool. Some of it was spun on a spinning wheel, and some of it was spun on a drop spindle. A drop spindle is an ancient tool for spinning yarn and thread, which basically consists of a weighted stick with a hook on the top. Some of the yarn is spun from commercially prepared roving, and some of it is wool I hand-processed from the urban sheep in Montreal's Parc Maisonneuve and Cap Saint-Jacques Ecological Farm, from sheep I know and love. Some of the yarn is store-bought. Some of the tubes have a smooth, uniform knit surface, while some of them have ribbing or cables, which makes grooves and bumpy textures. Some of the yarn is scratchy, itchy, prickly, and has small bits of grass, wood, and vegetable matter still lodged in it. Some of it is smooth and soft. Some of the tubes are lumpy and inconsistent. Others are more uniform. This inconsistency gives way to a very organic form. Some of the yarn has been dyed with natural dyes, using kitchen scraps, items from the grocery store, or plants from my garden. Avocado makes a muted pink. Onion makes a peachy orange color. Hibiscus tea makes gray-purple. Turmeric root and powder makes vibrant yellow. The shades and colors have a warm and earthy smell, slightly sweet. You might be able to smell it just by being close by. Some of the store-bought yarn was commercially dyed. These colors are less muted and more vibrant. The color is more consistent and uniform. Through several hand-size holes in the outer layer, visitors are invited to insert their hands inside the sculpture to feel the epic mess of loose threads and small woolly shapes contained within. Some of these threads and forms might even make their way outside the holes at times. Visitors are invited to squeeze, braid, twist, tie knots or untie knots in these inner threads, subtly changing inner and outer shape of the sculpture over time. A soundtrack plays softly in the background, made up of multiple layers of the artist's voice. Singing, whispering, humming, bubbling, gargling, even growling can be heard, evoking and reflecting the different textures of the different yarns and surfaces of the project, and inviting the visitor to listen to the sound of their own hands, body, breath, and internal state while interacting with the piece. The work is a gentle metaphor of my own experiences with mental illness and vocal training. Rearranging flowers behind a curtain refers to something one of my first voice teachers used to say, a metaphor speaking to the practice of guiding someone through a process of internal exploration and discovery from the outside, from another body. I believe that the threads we create when we interact with one another become irrevocably part of the fabric of who we are, part of our story, and even if we modify or completely untie those threads, we still carry that shape within us in some form.
Church choirs have all gone away, but we are resilient, we're strong, and we know that we'll all sing again one sweet day. A moment in time, for a moment in time, our world fell silent and still. When COVID-19 stole our singing dreams, thought it's just for a moment in time. But it's just for a moment in time.
5 Island Rugs. A Moment in Time was created by a group of women, many of whom are members of the singing groups represented in these hooked figures, happily singing on a hillside to their heart's content. The imagined location is close by St. John's, but might be anywhere, because it reflects a time in our world when, as a result of COVID-19 restrictions, singers could not come together in their usual fashion to do what they do, that is, to sing. We chose this setup because during the pandemic, some groups in our province gathered to sing on occasion in the great outdoors. Socially distant, of course. These 3-dimensional textile sculptures, 41 in total, are dressed in the usual performance attire of the singers they represent. Starting from the top and moving from left to right, they are St. Teresa's Folk Choir, dressed in casual attire, holding their choir books on the side, and Stella's Circle Inclusion Choir wearing black pants and long-sleeved T-shirts, an aqua blue crest at chest level with inclusion embroidered on it. The next row features the Philharmonic Choir of the Newfoundland Symphony Orchestra holding open books and formally dressed in black tuxedos, white shirts, and bow ties, or long dresses with sculpted necks and pearls. The Basilica Choir to their right are also holding open choir books and dressed in casual attire. The third row features the Holy Heart of Mary Alumni Choir in their blue tops with multicolored velour neck pieces and black pants or skirts. And the St. John's Choir, they're all in black, holding choir books and wearing gray silk neckties or red scarves. The fourth row has a small ledge on either end of the back to accommodate 2 members each of the Swinging Bells, featured in their signature polka dot dresses and their bearded instrumentalist in casual shirt and pants, and the Red Island Resettlement Girls in their red-topped outfits with their lead strumming her guitar. Placed in front of these ledges is a figure from each of the above groups, along with another representing the Newfoundland and Labrador Deaf Choir. These 9 figures are placed out front and at waist level for 2 reasons. First, so that visitors can pick them up to feel their tactile nature and the techniques used to enhance texture and dimension, the weight and surface of the different fabrics and yarns used, the smoother needle-felted hands and faces with stitched eyebrows and singing mouths, the sculpted arms and heads, and the different finishing touches, hairdos, scarves, bow ties, jewelry, and choir books. Second, so that visitors can experience previously recorded and beautifully performed YouTube songs by each of the choirs and groups. These can be accessed through the use of quick response, QR codes, placed near the figures, with personal iPhones or an iPad provided. The song by the Newfoundland and Labrador Deaf Choir is performed at the rooms with ASL interpretation, while the others, performed at different venues, are accompanied with closed captioning. Our rug hooking group set out to create a textile art piece in the form of 3-dimensional figures that would add much more to visitors' sense of touch than our regular flat-surfaced hooked rugs would. We also set out to include songs by the choirs and groups for people's listening pleasure. Initial discussions with the Deaf Association of Newfoundland and Labrador evolved into an exciting collaboration with the Newfoundland and Labrador Deaf Choir, all of which resulted in the use of closed captioning and ASL to make the songs available to people who are deaf. In addition, a booklet with Braille translation is available to visitors. It includes information about each of the choirs and singing groups represented, along with statements from singers who completed a questionnaire about how they and their group were impacted by COVID-19 restrictions. Sarah Albu and Joanne B Kaar. A plan was hatched with Sarah Albu for our collaboration as part of Craft Council of Newfoundland and Labrador's 2021 exhibition Sensorius, a very tactile exhibition. Larger than life, these hands are made using wool from what's left of my dad's 40-year-old hand-knitted Orkney jumper. I handed them over to Sarah Albu in Montreal, Quebec, Canada, where fabulous things will happen to them. Bright, bold, woolly tentacles reach and stretch towards the hands, made from the wool of Joanne's father's 40-year-old hand-knitted Orkney jumper. Are tentacles hands? They look like they could be roots or branches or synapses. Either way, their job is to connect, stretching across time and distance and the Atlantic from one element to another, making contact.